Hello, this is Dylan Miller on Daily Dose of Dylan, Google Podcast, Spotify, Spreaker, or iHeartRadio. This is Dylan Miller on Daily Dose of Dylan. We some pretty good stuff today. Pretty good mix of NFL and NBA. I'll talk more about where I think each team stands with their Super Bowl odds, as well as some of the USA Olympic team. And yeah. Alright. I just have to remember that Google Podcast got discontinued, so when I do that intro, I have to exclude them. But I promise I'll get that right one day. As I said, as far as the schedule this week for podcasts, I'm going to be doing one today and probably Friday. I guess there's a chance tomorrow I can get a short one in, but it might be... I don't really see a point in doing, a 10-minute podcast, to be completely honest with you. But, I don't know, I'll see how it goes. If you don't hear from me tomorrow, I'll definitely be back Friday. But yeah, I'll definitely keep trying to upload every day this summer, because when I go back to school, I'm gonna have to go a while without doing a podcast. So, alright, enough of that. We're going to kick it off with Tua and the Dolphins, who are in active contract talks right now. And listen, there's a weird thing with the NFL and the contracts people are getting, like Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts being paid money that's probably out of their range as far as where they... Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott all getting paid big money. But, they're not the top 3 quarterbacks in the league, if you know what I'm saying. Their contract ranking is not proportional to their quarterback ranking. So Tua and the Dolphins, I think Tua will get paid, and he deserves to, because the Dolphins, they win with him. He may not be the biggest guy, he doesn't have the best arm, but for better or worse, they win with Tua. And without Tua, they're significantly less successful. So I'm going to pay him a large contract, also because of another thing to consider is his injury history. He's had some injury problems in the past, concussion issues. So I definitely wouldn't pay him a large contract like the Jags did with Trevor Lawrence. But looking at the numbers, the Dolphins, they are a lot better with Tua than they are with other quarterbacks. With Tua, they are 19-12. Tua has a 66% completion percentage, 55 touchdowns to 23 interceptions, and a 101 passer rating. When the Dolphins have another quarterback starting, they're 1-4, 55% completion percentage between all the quarterbacks, 6 touchdowns, 9 picks, and a 66 passer rating. So there's a significant decline in quarterback production when Tua's not there. So Tua, he does deserve money. And in all honesty, when you're winning with a guy, when you make the playoffs and are successful with a certain quarterback, you keep them, because there's a lot of great coaches in the league, but not all of them can win with any quarterback. Right, even Sean McVay is one of the smartest guys in the league, but he struggled to win with Jared Goff when Jared Goff was kind of slumping. There's only, honestly, one coach in the league that I think it doesn't matter what quarterback he has, and that's Kyle Shanahan. I don't think Brock Purdy's an incredible quarterback. He's average, I would say. But even then, Kyle Shanahan gets away with that because Brock Purdy has Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. The offense is stacked even without a quarterback, right? So, the Dolphins, they have Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. Their offense is very... they were I think the best, if I'm not mistaken, the highest scoring offense last year. I could be wrong on that. I gotta check my numbers, but they're definitely one of the best in the league offensively. And Tua is a big reason for that. So I would definitely pay him, just be careful how much, because you pay too much for him, you wind up where Dallas is, and then you don't have money for Waddle, or Tyreek Hill is also looking for a new contract. But, yeah, with that, let's shift to Team USA. Cooper Flagg, the 17-year-old, put on, was the biggest story yesterday at the USA scrimmage. And I think there were maybe 2 or 3 plays that were put on this, that were broadcasted through social media. But listen, I wouldn't expect him to dominate. He's a 17-year-old against the best players in the NBA, some of the best defensive players, like Anthony Davis, but I do think with Cooper Flagg, we're going to have, especially now that he's with Team USA, there's going to be the same amount of hype around him as there was around Zion or Wembanyama in the past 5 years. I guess it was 5 years ago now, everyone knew whoever got the number 1 pick was going to get Zion. Happened to be the Pelicans, and then last year was the same with Wembanyama. Whoever gets the first pick in the lottery, they get Victor Wembanyama. There's no debating who goes first. And Cooper Flagg is the only other player other than those two that I think is going to match that kind of hype. But, we're going to see how he does. I don't think a 17-year-old's been this hyped up since LeBron James, to be honest with you. LeBron, he was on as great as Zion and Wembanyama were in college. LeBron was a bigger story as an 18-year-old coming into the draft, the consensus number 1 pick. So I think Cooper Flagg is going to be the first guy to kind of match that kind of hype, that kind of story. All right, so for Super Bowl contenders, I went over this on my last podcast. I gave 5 teams: the Niners, Lions, Bengals, Ravens, and the Chiefs, which is what I would call a safe take. I wouldn't... It wasn't a hot take at all, is what I'm saying. It's just kind of... it's the 5 obvious picks. I feel most people would agree with me on that. Maybe some might argue the Bengals out of there, I guess. And, there's the people that would argue the Cowboys belong in there, which I would have to disagree with, just because I hate the way the Cowboys run things. And with all the contracts that they're going to have to pay pretty soon, and it's hard to ignore that CeeDee Lamb, top 5 receiver in the league, their best receiver, is holding out. You can't just brush past that. You can't ignore that by just saying, oh, they won 12 games the past 3 years. Yeah, they also won 1 playoff game in the past 3 years. They're 1-3 in playoff games in the past 3 years. So it doesn't matter that they are 12-5 the past 3 seasons. Their playoff record completely disregards that for me. But, there are definitely other teams that you could convince me deserve to be in there. Listen, the NFL is all about parity. And I think there's been more and more teams that are competitive the past few years. The Chiefs are really the only team that have been constant. I guess the Chiefs and Niners the past 5 years have been pretty dominant. But, 1 year you get the Bucks sneaking in to beat the Chiefs. Then all of a sudden you get the Bengals and Rams that 1 year. And then this year the Lions came onto the scene. 2 years ago it was the Eagles. So there's always, even though you got the Chiefs and Niners pretty much every year so far, there's always that other team that's going to be competitive. It's not always going to be the same teams every year. And I guess you can throw in the Bills to that mix. They've been going deep in the playoffs most years, but they're going to take a slide this year, in my opinion. But, you can always I mean, it wouldn't be hard to convince me the Packers might make a push for the Super Bowl, because I'm a Packers fan, but I mean, listen, they were fantastic last year. They won a playoff game. They went toe-to-toe with the Niners, who made the Super Bowl, took it to overtime, almost beat the Chiefs. So the fact that the Packers went toe-to-toe with them, it's not far-fetched, but I don't think the Packers are going there. I think they're looking at a second-round exit probably, because I don't think they're as good as the Lions or Niners yet, but they are trending in the right direction. I did mention the Jets on my last podcast. Hoping to God Aaron Rodgers stays healthy and that his Achilles isn't shot. I mean, they got Garrett Wilson, they got Breece Hall. Their O-line is the best it's been in years. And they've had a good defense the last, 5 years, so there's no questioning that side of the ball. Listen, the CJ Stroud and the Texans, they made it to the second round of the playoffs last year. They added Joe Mixon to their team. That's a team you can probably convince me can make a push for the Super Bowl. The Eagles, they looked shaky at the end of last year, but they're still the Eagles. They still got Jalen Hurts. I'm going to talk more about them later and explain why I didn't put them in my 5 Super Bowl contenders for next year. But yeah, there's definitely other teams you could convince me belong in that category. I was just being safe. I wasn't going to make any... wasn't in the mood to make any hot takes on Friday, so... Alright, let's stay in the NFL category. So, Mark Schlereth, I think I'm pronouncing that right, and analyst, he spoke about Caleb Williams, and he said something that is... he had a good point. He said generational talent doesn't exactly mean he's going to be a generational quarterback, which I entirely agree with. I mean, Caleb Williams, I think he's going to do well. But it's hard to say. The Bears, it's hard to know that the Bears haven't had a good quarterback ever in their entire team's history. I mean, they won a Super Bowl with Jim McMahon in the 80s, but they didn't win that Super Bowl because of their quarterback. They won because they had the best defense ever assembled, and they had Walter Payton. And you might argue that their quarterback is the reason they won specifically the Super Bowl, because in the Super Bowl, Walter Payton was shut down, but what you have to take into account is the quarterback wouldn't have done so well if the defense wasn't so focused on stopping Walter Payton and leaving everybody open. So, it's hard to ignore that, and they just, I thought Justin Fields was talented coming out of college, and he was, but he did poorly with the Bears, so... Listen, I like Caleb Williams, and he is in a better spot than Justin Fields ever was. With Keenan Allen. Obviously, DJ Moore's still there. Their defense is still pretty good. So he's in a better spot than Justin Fields was when he started. And I do think Caleb Williams is better than Justin Fields. But Schlereth is right. I mean, we do have to pump the brakes on calling him a franchise quarterback. We can't be assuming he's going to change the Bears franchise forever. But, I think he'll be good. That's my guess. But, listen, I'm not at practice. I've never seen him throw a ball in the NFL. So, I think the next time I'll make a call on him is, the school year is going to be started by then, but probably my first podcast back, which might be in November, hopefully. So that'll be a few weeks in. I'll be able to tell you what Caleb Williams looks like at first glance. So, listen, Caleb Williams, he's talented, but we have no idea what he's going to look like in the NFL. So let's shift back to the NBA. Jason Tatum, he made a comment saying winning a title ends his debate about whether or not he's elite status. And listen, I think Jason Tatum is really good. I do think he would probably be in my top 7 in the league, which I think would put him in the elite category, top 5, top 7. But, like, listen, he has to realize he didn't win the title by himself, and not only did he not win it by himself, he didn't even win MVP. It was Jaylen Brown. And that's what I was saying during the series, that Jaylen Brown was the best part of that series for the Celtics. So not only do I think Jason Tatum didn't do it by himself, but he wasn't even the main reason they won. So Jason Tatum, he is, in my opinion, the best player on the Celtics, but the most impactful was Jaylen Brown in that finals run. And that was also the case a few years ago when they played the Warriors. Tatum wasn't the best player on the Celtics in the finals, it was Jaylen Brown. So, I think in regular season, early postseason, Jason Tatum is the best player there, but in the finals, the 2 finals appearances they've had, Jaylen Brown has been superior. So I do think Tatum, he has a lot of talent. He is top 7 in the league. I consider him elite, but I wouldn't call myself elite if I were in Jason Tatum's shoes. Because, you won, and many consider you the best player, but you did have Jaylen Brown, who won Finals MVP. You had Jrue Holiday, who won you guys Game 3. He was the best player in Game 3. He scored, 26 points. He was the lockdown defender during the series. You had a lot of help from the role players and Jaylen Brown, so let's not go around calling ourselves elite after one title. Jason Tatum, he will play for Team USA in the Olympics, and Steve Kerr said that this Olympic team this year is the most decorated one since the Dream Team. Now, in my opinion, if anyone knows talent, it's Steve Kerr. He played on, in my opinion, the best team ever, the 90s Bulls. He was coached by Phil Jackson. He coached Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson. He was in 4 finals against LeBron James. So I would say if anyone can make a call about a team's talent, it's Steve Kerr. And listen, it's a different era, so don't go... And I don't think this comment was meant to compare the Dream Team and this new team. It's an entirely different era. It's an entirely different team. It's a great team, don't get me wrong. But, it's more of a modern Dream Team than it is the new Dream Team, I would say. It's got... Listen, we got LeBron James, a top 2 player of all time. Many would argue the greatest. He still got it. I would still put him in my top 10 players in the league. Had 25 points to last 19 seasons. You Steph Curry. He might even crack my top 5 in the league. Still an excellent player. Still the best shooter in the league. Best shooter of all time. Kevin Durant, top 12 ever. Still one of the best scorers in the league. Joel Embiid, an MVP candidate the last few years. Devin Booker, who is, like Kevin Durant, one of the best scorers in the league. Kawhi Leonard, one of the best two-ways in the league. Jason Tatum, I just mentioned. Fantastic player. I wouldn't say he's exactly a leader, but Jrue Holiday, probably the weakest on the team, but still, I don't think the Celtics win that finals without him. He's probably the best, I would argue the best defender on that team, either him or AD, or Bam Adebayo. But yeah, there's not really any holes in this team. You got Anthony Davis, great defender, little brittle, but still great. Anthony Edwards, one of the best players in the league, just led the Timberwolves to a surprise Western Conference Finals. Bam Adebayo, Tyrese Halliburton. So there's not a single player on the team that I don't think has value to it. So it's very well put together, and it will likely have a similar dominance to that the Dream Team had in that 92 season. So where do I want to go next? Let's shift back to football. So yeah, I guess we'll go back to the Super Bowl teams that I was talking about. I mean, listen, there's a lot. So, an NFL writer, Connor Orr, he came out with his own list of teams that can make a Super Bowl this year, win the Super Bowl this year. He had 12 on the list, which I think is more than enough. I don't think all these teams can win the Super Bowl, but I think it's interesting to argue the cases for each team. You know, I shouldn't say they can't win. It's not impossible. It's just a lot of things would have to go perfectly for the team. Right? So he has the Niners, which I agree with. They just made the Super Bowl. And like I said, they made it to overtime. Very close to winning. Have a great roster. And in my opinion, a top 2 coach in the league. Bengals, they made the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Pretty damn close to winning, beating the Rams. Joe Burrow's back. He's no longer injured. They have Jamar Chase. I don't think I have to argue much for them. The Bills might take a little convincing for me. They do still have Josh Allen. I'll say that. But they seem to be slowly losing pieces to the puzzle that made them such a formidable team. But I guess I could still see them being successful this year, potentially pushing a Super Bowl. He also has the Browns on the list, which I thought was interesting. The Browns, they have a decent roster. Deshaun Watson could be on his way back. Who else do they have? The Chiefs, they just won the Super Bowl. Pretty self-explanatory. The Eagles, as I said, I kept them off the list just pretty much because of what happened at the end of last year. The downward spiral they took. Right? Like, it kind of... I have a lot of questions about that. But listen, still got Jalen Hurts. He's very talented. Still have a great offense. Don't forget, it was only 2 years ago that they dropped 35 on the Chiefs and went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes. So, the Jets, like I said on Friday, Aaron Rodgers stays healthy. They got a great offense, great defense. They got what they need. It's just they need Rodgers to stay healthy. And if he gets injured, if he tweaks that Achilles at all, they're right back to where they were last year. So, the Jets, they can contend for a Super Bowl, but it's gonna take a 40-year-old staying healthy. So, the Lions, I agree with 100%. They were pretty close to beating the Niners. Very similar to the Packers, who he also has on the list. He also has the Rams, which is interesting. I understand it. They won the Super Bowl not too long ago. They had a pretty bad Super Bowl hangover, but they seem to be bouncing back. And they still have Sean McVay, Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp. Puka Nacua is had a great rookie year last year. And then he has the Ravens, who in the AFC Championship, and then the Texans. So I agree with most of the teams on the list. And like I said, there's always that one team every year that makes a deep run that we don't see coming. But ultimately, winning a Super Bowl is a different level. Of all the teams I mentioned, the Eagles, the Bucks, the Rams, the Bengals, only 2 of those teams actually won the Super Bowl. A lot of those teams made a great push, but only 2 of them actually won it, and that's what the list is. That's the list of the people he thinks, or teams that he thinks can win the Super Bowl. That's just a whole different spectrum. And it's hard to call. All right, let's circle back to the Caleb Williams take. And listen, I'm not calling him a franchise quarterback yet. I don't think. Like, if you're asking me who I would start, if I had to pick a quarterback in the league right now that I would start a franchise with, I wouldn't put Caleb Williams on that list. I would have, the best quarterbacks in the league, obviously Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, Lamar, Joe Burrow. I think C.J. Stroud is one of the best to start a franchise with after he was in the MVP running at some point last year. But yeah, Stroud, Burrow, Lamar, Herbert, Allen, Mahomes. I would throw Jordan Love in the mix, although I do think I still need to see a little bit more of him. Even Trevor Lawrence, I think he has potential. He just has to fix his turnover problem. But yeah, Caleb Williams, just because I haven't seen him in an NFL game, I can't say what some of these other analysts are saying, which is that he's going to turn the Bears franchise around, All right, so we're going to shift to the Lakers, who I seem to talk a lot about recently. But, they're going to be in the news a lot this year. That's all I'll say. They got the first father-son duo ever. They hired a coach who used to be a podcaster. And their 2 best players are both, first of all, their best player is turning 40. Their second best player is in his 30s, and he's injury prone. So, LeBron does still believe they can win another title, as he said a few days ago. But not sure I'm buying that. What I would like for LeBron to do is own the fact that he has a lot of influence over the Lakers. And I get that, I think what a lot of people don't get, the people that are kind of riding LeBron for this, LeBron isn't the GM, so he doesn't actually make the final call. He isn't the one who called saying he wanted to draft Bronny or that he wanted to get these free agents or hire this coach. The GM is the one that did all that, right? But clearly, based on the moves that are made, LeBron does have a lot of influence over the GM. So I wish he would kind of own that a bit. They drafted his son, who, in all honesty, wasn't good enough to be drafted, even if it was a second rounder. He wasn't good enough to be in the draft this year. Then they hired, J.J. Redick might be qualified to be a coach as a former NBA player, but he had a podcast with LeBron James. So they hire LeBron's friend as a coach. That's another big thing. But yeah, I just don't think the Lakers are good enough to win another title. If you asked me a few years ago, I would say yes. But yeah, they made the Western Conference Finals 2 years ago, which was a nice surprise, but I think they're slowly declining. That's what I see from them. Okay, I do have to get a Jets segment in today because, like the Lakers, I talk a lot about the Jets, and I probably will talk a lot about them this year. But anyway, Nathaniel Hackett, the tremendous offensive coordinator, said that Aaron Rodgers is playing like 40 is the new 20. And listen, again, I'm not at practice, so I can't tell if that's true or not. But listen, as I've said, if Rodgers plays well and he's in good shape, the Jets are in a fantastic spot. as hard as the AFC is, the Jets, if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, they can contend with the Chiefs, with the Ravens, with the Bengals. But there's no telling what they will do until we see how Rodgers looks the first game, you know? And I know people will often bring up Rodgers had a quote-unquote down year his last time he was fully healthy, but in his defense, he had lost Davante Adams. He was dealing with a lot of young receivers who were just learning the ropes, and that's why we were more successful this year with Jordan Love, because Jordan Love is in the same position as them. It's hard for Aaron Rodgers to be patient and relate to the younger receivers when he's in an entirely different position of his career. He was in a win now position. The receivers were in a learn now position. So it was very different. And I think in this case, Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall are young, yes, but they are more experienced than the receivers that Rodgers had his last year in Green Bay. So I think it really all depends on Rodgers' health. All right. Sticking with the football theme, CeeDee Lamb is refusing to talk about his contract negotiation, and in all honesty, don't blame him because, well, he doesn't have to, and I don't think there's much to say. I think him skipping camp kind of says it all about where he stands as far as his contract, but yeah. I mean, he's clearly serious about it if he's not showing up to camp, which he would typically do. But I do think we have to consider it's not a guarantee that he signs a contract with the Cowboys, because receivers get moved around the league a lot. I mean, Stephon Diggs got traded, Tyreek Hill to the Dolphins, Davante Adams to the Raiders. Receivers get moved no matter their talent, and Dallas is in no different position, especially when they're paying Dak Prescott $1 billion when he doesn't deserve it. So, I mean, it is possible that CeeDee Lamb, I think he'll play this year for the Cowboys. And the Cowboys do have leverage over Lamb, because they can just franchise tag him this year, which I think is a real possibility. But I don't know. We'll see. Dallas, this is just why I don't like them. They have a lot of drama this offseason. And we saw what drama did to the Packers 2 years ago. The Packers were consistently making the NFC Championship constantly. Then they had the news, Rodgers wanted out, noisy offseason 2 years in a row. And what happened? Yes, they were the 1 seed that 1 year, but they lost in the divisional round to Jimmy Garoppolo, a team they probably should have beaten. And then the year after, they missed the playoffs. And what do you know? The next year, quiet offseason. I mean, I guess a little bit of noise because people were speculating about Jordan Love being awful, and he proved them all wrong. But not nearly as noisy as the years prior, and we made the playoffs, right? So I think noisy off seasons lead to disappointing seasons, no matter how talented the team is. So yeah, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, that's not going to do much if your team if you got problems in the locker room, right? So we'll see what Dallas does. I'm not rooting against Dallas, but I'm having a tough time believing in them for this year. All right. You know what? I mentioned Tyreek Hill before, and that was supposed to be my lead into my next segment. I kind of screwed that up. But anyway, Tyreek Hill spoke about his contract extension. He said his main goal is to win a Super Bowl. I do think the real losers here are the GMs, because they have to, like, receivers. There's a lot of receivers that are up for extension this year, looking to get paid. Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill. And Jefferson's contract is going to have all of those guys looking for that kind of money. And a lot of these teams, especially the Cowboys, don't have that money to give. So... And the thing is, if CeeDee Lamb and Chase get paid before Tyreek Hill does, Tyreek Hill becomes the 6th highest paid receiver in the league. And that doesn't match up to where he ranks among receivers. I would put him in the top 3 in the league after last season. So... Yeah, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase. With Jefferson's contract, even though I think Jefferson is the best receiver in the league, there's no doubting those guys are not... They're not on an entirely different level. They're just as good as Jefferson is, and they know that, and they're going to use that as leverage to get a contract. Alright, so now I'm going to talk about the Eagles. They're projected for 10.5 wins this season, which I think is reasonable because they had a rough finish last year. First round exit. The offense was turning the ball over way more than they usually do. But on the flip side, like I mentioned, they are the same team that made the Super Bowl. Dropped 35 points on the Chiefs. But, they've been through multiple different offensive play callers in the past few years. Jalen Hurts, that is. Doug Peterson, Nick Sirianni, Shane Steichen, and now they got Kellen Moore coming in. And also, another negative, they lost Shane Steichen. Their offensive coordinator, so they lost their OC. Jason Kelce retired. Hassan Reddick left. So they're losing a lot. They did gain Barkley, which I'll give to them. So their offense should be better, all things considered. They do still have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. So I do think their offense will be good still. It's just their defense is going to... Their O-line is not going to be as good without Kelce, and their defense is going to be worse without Reddick. So the Eagles might lose they're not going to be worse than the Giants or Washington. But they might lose first in the division to the Cowboys because of what they lost. So that's my main worry with them. As far as how many wins they'll have, they should get at least 4 with Washington and the Giants twice a year. But they could split the series with the Cowboys, would give them 5. But yeah, I think 10.5 is a fair number after that fall last season. Alright. So Paul George had a podcast a few days ago. He called the Los Angeles Clippers initial offer to him disrespectful, which pretty crazy to me because if disrespectful is, what was he probably offer, like $40 million a year? I would love to be disrespected. So, but it is interesting. I think the Clippers offer was probably fair to PG. He just didn't realize it because PG won more playoff series with Indiana than LA, which is crazy to consider because PG was definitely the best player on that Pacers team, whereas in LA, he had Kawhi with him and more role players. And then Kawhi, he had more playoff series wins in one season with the Raptors than he did with the Clippers at all. And a stat that's even worse is, forget playoff series wins, the Clippers have 3 playoff wins the last 3 years. Swept, lost in 5, lost in 6. So I think, even though PG might think I deserve a lot of money, I think what LA's feeling is we have 2 guys in their mid-30s who we haven't had any success with. We really haven't won with them at all. So why would we go paying them the big money when they really haven't earned it, Paul George also said that a trade to the Warriors was very close to happening. And had he gone there, they would have been probably favored to make the title, but I don't think they would have won anything. I don't think signing PG would have made them better than Denver or the Mavs or Minnesota. So the Sixers, this is what I was trying to say on Friday. Sixers signing him is going to give them a boost, but I don't think it's going to bring them to the title. I don't think they're better than the Celtics with PG. But yeah, speaking of free agency signings, DeMar DeRozan was considering the Lakers and the Heat before signing with the Kings. And like I said, I don't like the way the Lakers handled things this offseason. They were allegedly pushing for Clay, didn't get him. LeBron said he would take a pay cut, then got $101 million. He initially had $104, then took a $3 million pay cut. Thank God, right? But yeah, they got no one. And now you got this DeRozan report coming out. And, the thing with Klay Thompson and DeMar DeRozan is the Lakers had an advantage because they grew up in LA. DeRozan and Klay. Hell, with Klay, he also had his father who played there. And yet they couldn't close the deal with they couldn't close the deal with Klay. DeRozan, they didn't even make an offer. And DeRozan is a great player. He would have been a great help to the Lakers, but they didn't go for it. Alright, so my last segment of the day is about JJ Redick, who said he wouldn't continue his podcast to focus on the Lakers job. He's doing to his credit, he's doing what he can to make this season as good as possible for the Lakers. Like I said, they're not a championship-built roster at all. But we'll see. We'll see what they can accomplish. And listen, I think he has potential. I think he's a smart guy. It's not him I'm worried about. It's the roster in general. I just don't think they're well built. So we'll see if they prove me wrong. Anyway, this was Dylan Miller on Daily Dose of Dylan. I will probably do a podcast Friday. Will be the next one. But, yeah, this was Dylan Miller on Daily Dose of Dylan. Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio. This is Dylan Miller on Daily Dose of Dylan. Have a good day.